Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have captured the key northern city of Kunduz after fierce fighting with government forces. Local officials have confirmed that the group has taken control of government buildings, including the governor's office and police headquarters. It is the fourth regional capital fallen to the Taliban since Friday. Islamabad has rejected India's baseless allegations that Pakistan wanted to infiltrate so-called terrorists via the line of control. In a statement, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said the EU Disinfo Lab report has fully exposed New Delhi's smear campaign against Pakistan. Chaudhry said India has been involved in state terrorism in occupied Kashmir and Pakistan. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah says his group does not seek escalation with Israel, but will respond to any Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. In a speech commemorating the end of the 2006 war with Israel, Nasrallah said Hezbollah can target open land in northern occupied Palestine, Galilee, and the Golan Heights in counter-strikes. On Wednesday, Israel struck targets in southern Lebanon. Brazil has recorded 990 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 43,000 new cases. In Pakistan, 68 people have died while over 4,400 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia says it will begin receiving Umrah pilgrimage requests from vaccinated foreigners from 9th of August. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.2 million lives and infected 202 million people. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Islamabad has rejected India's baseless allegations that Pakistan wanted to infiltrate so-called terrorists via the line of control. In a statement, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said the EU Disinfo Lab report has fully exposed New Delhi's smear campaign against Pakistan. Chaudhry said India has been involved in state terrorism in occupied Kashmir and Pakistan. He said from the Samjhauta Express killings of 2007 to the Lahore blast of 2021, all terror incidents had an Indian hand. It said India must not use misleading allegations of so-called infiltration to scuttle the February truce. In Pakistan, the counter-terrorism department has gunned down 3 militants in the eastern city of Lahore. A spokesperson for the CTD said the terrorists hailed from Afghanistan and were living in the rented house. The spokesperson said the department conducted an intelligence-based operation in the Firozwala area. He said militants were planning attacks on intelligence agencies and law enforcement personnel. The spokesperson added that the militants also planned to target important personalities. The CTD said it has recovered a suicide vest, 3 hand grenades and 3 Kalashnikov rifles. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have captured the key northern city of Kunduz after fierce fighting with government forces. Local officials have confirmed that the group has taken control of government buildings, including the governor's office and police headquarters. Kunduz is the fourth regional capital fallen to the Taliban since Friday. It is one of the country's largest cities and a strategic crossroads with good access to much of northern Afghanistan as well as the capital Kabul. The Taliban claim to have seized another northern city, Saripol, within hours of Kunduz. Heavy fighting is also underway in Herat in the west and the southern cities of Kandahar and Lashkar Gah. Thousands of civilians have been displaced during the fighting this year amid the withdrawal of foreign troops from the country. And now we're joined by Arshad Yousafzai, a political analyst from Peshawar. Yousafzai, thank you for your time. Mr. Yousafzai, the Taliban are now making inroads into city centers, which were seen as the fortresses of the Afghan National Forces. How significant are these developments symbolically and strategically, and what would they mean for the people of Afghanistan?
Well, as we have seen earlier this morning, the Taliban have claimed that two provinces, not cities but provinces, Kunduz and Saripul, have fallen to them, and they are on the way to KUNDUZ airport now. Their fighters are going there and they will be able to capture it soon, because we have been hearing about reports that government soldiers are just putting up weapons. They're just laying down their weapons and surrendering. This is now the fourth major city in the past 48 hours that has fallen to Taliban, starting with Zaranj in Nimroz, that is connecting Iran with Afghanistan. And it was one of the most important border crossings for Afghanistan because all the fuel supply from Iran is through Zaranj, and then secondly through Heratan. So effectively the Taliban have now cut off Afghan government or the Kabul government from any road line connections with Iran, and it means that the fuel supply from Iran is stopped now. Secondly, these are now cities that the Taliban are capturing. They have captured Zaranj, they have captured Shabarghan yesterday. That was one of the strongest places for them because of Dostum's militia. They have captured two provinces this morning, and they are pushing for fighting. The fighting is going on in Helmand and Herat and Kandahar. Now, the Taliban claim, we still have to verify this, but they claim that in their cities, where they are now in power, the people are happy and they are cheering, they are welcoming them, and the Taliban have restored peace, which they believe or they claim was missing because the forces were corrupt and they were really ineffective in controlling the situation in the cities they were there. So I believe that the Taliban are still following the policy of cutting off the Afghan government from all border crossing with other countries. Afghanistan is now only relying on Torkham with Pakistan and Heratan up in the north with Uzbekistan. That is also, large fuel depots are there. And I've been hearing reports from the Taliban sources that the Taliban want to negotiate peace there, because they do not want any harm to the fuel supplies or the fuel depots there. And in case of fighting, it is quite possible that either the Taliban or the soldiers that are fighting there could put these fuel resources to fire.
Right. Mr. Yousafzai, with the Taliban accusing the U.S. of killing civilians and hitting a hospital, are we back to square one of the Afghan conflict?
I believe so, yes, because previously in 2001, there were the Taliban had no system or mechanism to verify their claims, but now they are so effectively using this social media. They are using mobile phones with videos from all these places where the U.S. is bombarding cities. Like earlier this morning, they shared videos on their WhatsApp groups claiming that the U.S. bombardment last night had hit a hospital and a school. So the Taliban claims are verified with their people on ground sharing videos and also talking to people in the localities. I believe the U.S. is repeating the same mistake, and it's not just them this time, it's also the Afghan Air Force. It's like a blind bombardment on cities, on civilians, schools, and especially targeting hospitals now.
Right. Mr. Yousafzai, with the recent developments, do you see the U.S. is increasing its military role in the war-torn country once again?
I believe they learned their lessons and they're not going to come back to the ground, but they can effectively use their weaponry, that is the Air Force, to bombard the Taliban strongholds like they've been doing, and occasionally getting successes, mostly killing civilians. But the United States is now staying away from Afghanistan, knowing that they cannot defeat the Taliban. but their role cannot be diminished. They will still remain there, knowing that they cannot be harmed any further. They are relatively easy, in an easy place to continue their role in Afghanistan. But the Taliban are not happy with their role on ground as well. That is the diplomatic role the U.S. Embassy in Kabul is playing, accusing the Taliban of things that they have or have not committed without verifying facts. So the U.S. involvement is still there. They are still supporting the Afghan government as they said they would. The Taliban, on the other hand, they cannot fight the U.S. any longer because there's no presence on ground. But they are thinking of other ways of dealing with that. That could be like diplomatic ties in the future, or issues that can create for the U.S. aid agencies or people or agencies connected to the United States.
Right. Mr. Yousafzai, what do you believe is the biggest roadblock for the peace process and a political settlement?
Well, obviously, it is the fact that everybody is ignoring Pakistan. It's just like, if you compare it, it's just like back to 2001 in Bonn conference, that a conference is held and the major stakeholder, that is the Afghan Taliban, were not even invited there. And the Taliban have been telling everybody that this was their mistake. Many people in the West have accepted this mistake. Now the powers that they are ignoring Pakistan in the peace process. Although they accuse Pakistan of having control over the Taliban, which we believe has diminished over the past years, but it is still important that Pakistan can play a major role in this peace process. And ignoring Pakistan's role is just foolish act, because how can you bring peace in Afghanistan when you claim or you accuse Pakistan of pushing people towards the war, of providing manpower to the Taliban, and then at the same time you do not invite them. You cannot punish Pakistan for trying to play a positive role in peace in Afghanistan. And you cannot certainly force anybody to come to your terms without giving them their due respect or their due credit for all the effort that they had been doing in the past. I believe involving Pakistan is important, and once Pakistan is there, serious efforts are put in by Pakistan, that is when we can see any progress in the peace process.
Right, Arshad Yousafzai, thank you for speaking to Indus News. And now we're moving on. In South Sudan, at least 30 soldiers have been killed in clashes between forces loyal to Vice President Riek Machar and a splinter group. Tensions boiled after rival military leaders of Machar's party announced that he was ousted as head of the party and armed forces. The latest clashes occurred in Magnus in the country's upper Nile region. Machar's party claimed they killed 2 major generals and 27 soldiers in self-defense and lost 3 of their own, while Splinter Group denied the offensive, saying they suffered 4 casualties while inflicting a loss of 28 to the enemy side. The fighting threatens an already fragile peace deal between Machar and his old foe, President Salva Kiir. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah says his group does not seek escalation with Israel, but will respond to any Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. He said this in a televised speech to commemorate the end of the 2006 war with Israel. Nasrallah said Hezbollah can target open land in northern occupied Palestine, Galilee, or the Golan Heights in counterstrikes. He said any Israeli airstrike would be responded to in the inappropriate and proportional way. On Wednesday, Israel struck targets in South Lebanon in response to alleged rocket fire by local groups in the area. Meanwhile, Nasrallah called the investigator of the Beirut port blast politically biased. On Thursday, Beirut marked the 1-year anniversary of the blast that killed more than 200 people. Brazil has recorded 990 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 43,000 new cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.2 million lives and infected over 202 million people. Details in this report.
The highly contagious Delta variant continues to threaten the world. In Australia, authorities in the three most populous states are struggling to quell outbreaks of the Delta variant, with millions in lockdown. The federal government announced it is investing $17.7 million in additional mental health support for people in lockdown. Authorities have urged the public to adhere to the SOPs as the situation does not show signs of any relief.
PM, yesterday there were 262 cases of community transmission, with at least 50 of those infectious in the community during that time. And as we've seen in the last few days, the numbers are bouncing around a bit, but clearly we need to reduce those numbers. And I urge everybody to please stick to the rules, follow the health advice, and only leave home if you absolutely have to.
Saudi Arabia says it will begin receiving Umrah pilgrimage requests from vaccinated foreigners from the 9th of August. The country did not receive overseas worshippers for an entire year and a half. Meanwhile, India has approved Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine for emergency use. Over in Europe, protests continue against lockdowns and government's rules about vaccination in France and Italy.
Today I decided to demonstrate against the Green Pass because I heard that it will be required to access university spaces. I am not against the vaccine, but I think people should be free to choose whether or not to receive it. I don't want that people who do not want to be vaccinated will be forced to do it after the introduction of this so-called pass.
Meanwhile, Tokyo Olympic organizers have reported another 26 infections among participants, bringing the total to 430.
Pakistan has received another 680,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccine from China for COVID-19. The officials say the government will consider the province's requirements before providing them with the vaccine stock. According to the Health Ministry, the virus has claimed another 68 lives over the past 24 hours. The ministry said the nationwide tally of fatalities has risen to 23,865. It said more than 4,400 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry reported the positivity rate of tests at 8.09%. It said the caseload has exceeded 1,067,000, after which over 961,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has lauded the National Command and Operations Centre's role to curb the virus spread. Pakistan says it delegates high priority to strengthening and diversifying its engagement with ASEAN. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi made these remarks on the organization's 54th anniversary. Qureshi said ASEAN's goals are in line with Pakistan's Vision East Asia policy. The Foreign Minister said ASEAN is a fine example of open regionalism worthy of emulation. Qureshi admired ASEAN for its effective measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. He said the way ASEAN's far-sighted leadership has forged global cooperation while retaining its centrality is remarkable. Pakistan is remembering Major Tufail Muhammad on the 63rd anniversary of his martyrdom. In a tweet, the military's media wing said Tufail Muhammad's fortitude and determination remain hallmarks for generations of soldiers. A wreath-laying ceremony was held at his native town, Tufailabad in District Bihari. Hailing from Punjab's Hoshiarpur city, Major Tufail Muhammad was the second recipient of the country's highest military award, Nishan-e-Haider. In 1958, he was assigned to launch an offensive against Indian forces in the area of Lakshmipur. However, he embraced martyrdom while fighting fiercely for days with the enemy, despite being wounded. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Nigeria, one girl abducted from the town of Chibok has been freed and reunited with her parents after 7 years. Ruth Pogo is one of the 276 girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram militants from a school in April 2014. She will receive psychological and medical care as part of a rehabilitation program. About 114 girls are believed to be held by the militant group. In Ukraine, at least one soldier has been killed and another wounded in an attack in the Donbas region. In a statement, the Ukrainian army said its soldiers were attacked by pro-Russian separatists in the Pisky area of the region. According to the UN, fighting between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian separatists in Donbas has killed more than 13,000 people since 2014. The region is one of several sources of friction between Russia and Ukraine. In Argentina, tens of thousands hit the streets of the capital, Buenos Aires, to protect against poverty and unemployment. The country's soaring economic crisis has left 42% of the population in poverty, with an unemployment rate of 10%. Unemployment organizations and left-wing groups led the protest that began in a church in the city's west. They noted whole families were turning up to eat at food kitchens, with many children malnourished. Demonstrations were also staged in other cities across the country. The protesters called on the government to activate the economy.
I have come to ask for people who are unemployed. My brother is unemployed. Many of my neighbors are without a job. We see a lot of people are suffering around the country due to lack of work. Politicians should get their act together with people who are tired of lies. They should start activating the economy because people really need to work.
In Turkey, at least 14 people have been killed while 18 others are injured after a passenger bus overturned in Balıkesir province. Officials say the vehicle lost control and crashed on the Balıkesir highway while heading to the city of Edremit. They said the injured were shifted to nearby hospitals. An investigation to determine the cause of the accident is underway. In North Korea, more than 1,000 homes have been damaged due to flooding caused by heavy rains. About 5,000 people have been evacuated in southern Hamgyong province. According to the meteorological agency, heavy rains will last until the 10th of August and could cause more damage. The floods have damaged wide areas of farmland at a time North Korea is already facing a shortage of food. In Greece, a volunteer firefighter has been killed and at least 20 people have been injured across the country in fires that raged for a 6th day. The 30-year-old sustained a head injury from a falling telegraph pole, while 2 other firefighters required intensive care. The fire on the foothills of Mount Paranita, north of Athens, forced the evacuation of thousands of people. Wildfires have erupted amid Greece's worst heat wave in more than 30 years. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis called it a nightmarish summer. He said the government's priority has been first and foremost to protect human lives. In the U.S. state of California, at least 8 people are missing as one of the country's worst wildfires scorched through the state's northern communities. Police say 5 of the missing belong to the old mining town of Greenville, where flames leveled most of the downtown. In a statement, the Palmas County Sheriff's Office asked for the public help in finding the missing. The state's largest blaze, Dixie, has burned through 447,000 acres so far. Officials say only 21% of the blaze has been contained. Earlier, a 35% containment was reported. However, better mapping clarified the area. The cause of the fire is being investigated but still unknown. Dead horses lie scattered across arid steppe off Kazakhstan's Mangistu Peninsula as severe drought left animals without food and water. The worsening situation in the peninsula is threatening the livelihoods of hundreds of farmers. More in this report.
High temperatures have been reported throughout the former Soviet region of Central Asia this summer. In an effort to lessen this impact, Kazakhstan has banned exports of animal feed and sought extra water from its neighbors. However, due to severe drought, horses have nothing to graze on, while the prices of hay and barley have skyrocketed in the country. Breeding horses, along with camels, is a traditional occupation in the peninsula, with horse meat and maize milk as staples of Kazakh diet. Gabidola Kalibayuli, an owner of a horse farm in Akshay Mairao village, says his 150 horses herd have been weakened by malnutrition, making them vulnerable to parasites and illness.
Since the drought started, 20 of my horses and 1 camel have died. When they die out there in the field, we cannot even bring them back to the village to report the death.
Mangistau province has so far reported more than 1,000 horse, cattle and sheep deaths. The government says it is sending barley to area to cope the effect of severe drought. According to environmental scientists, the peninsula is becoming more susceptible to drought because of shallowing of the Caspian Sea.
The temperature rise made a different impact in different seasons, in different parts of our large country, but I can say that average temperatures in Kazakhstan are rising by 3 degrees Celsius every decade.
Dolgik says there might be some temporary positives, but agriculture as a whole is considered at risk from climate change.
Environmentalists say India's New Delhi was the world's most polluted capital for the third straight year in 2020. Now, pollution flowing downstream from New Delhi is threatening to spoil the beauty of the iconic Taj Mahal. This report has the details.
A thick layer of toxic foam covers the surface of the Yamuna River in New Delhi almost throughout the year. The Yamuna is known to be one of the most polluted rivers in the world, owing to industrial wastage, dump and sewer discharges. While the Yamuna fulfills 60% of New Delhi's water needs, almost the same percentage of the city's sewage finds its way into the river.
It is carrying dirt and pollution from Delhi and Mathura. It has also led to a rise in water levels. The Taj Mahal is located on the banks of Yamuna, and you can definitely see algae on it, along with other kinds of pollutants, since the water in the Yamuna is mixed with sewage water too.
During the monsoon, the water level rises and takes the pollutants with it downstream, slowing only in the plains of Agra city, affecting the beauty of the Taj Mahal monument that is located on the bank. The polluted water also becomes a perfect breeding ground for insects and bacteria.
80% pollution जो है वो दिल्ली.
At least 80% of the pollution in the Yamuna happens in Delhi. It flows and slows near Agra, and this pollution accumulates here, spoiling the beauty of the Taj Mahal. Goeldichronomus insects that feed on the algae infest the Yamuna water, leaving ugly and stubborn green spots on the Taj Mahal. It is very difficult to clean these spots.
Experts say the stains could permanently damage the historical structure if this is a perpetual problem. Apart from the river pollution and green spots, a high level of atmospheric black carbon presence in its air has also been contributing to the discoloration of the monument.
Climate change scientists consider methane to be a major driver of global warming. It is invisible and odorless, but its emissions are responsible for 30% of warming on a global scale since the pre-industrial era. This report has more.
Methane is the main component of natural gas and is over 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide in the first 20 years after emission. It is produced as a byproduct of the oil and gas industry. Methane is the major component of natural gas and, if captured, can be used as a fuel for power plants and domestic purposes. Its concentration in the atmosphere is currently increasing at a rate of around 1% per year. And experts say tackling methane emissions is the strongest lever they have to slow climate change over the next 25 years.
There is an industrial area here using a lot of methane. Why we have to put it in the sky and contribute to the destruction of our climate? So there must be more rational ways in year 2021 to use methane instead of venting in the atmosphere.
While governments around the world do not usually report leak rate figures, scientists can estimate the leak rate by looking at reported emissions and reported production. A Clean Air Task Force official says it took the images of more than 200 sites across Europe over 3 months. He said most of these sites have been leaking emissions in some way or another. And on the second visit to the same sites revealed the authorities did nothing to fix it and the leakage was still there.
Whether it's a leak or some sort of operational practice, most of these emissions can be reduced at negative or marginal costs to the company. For instance, when you look at the video of the rusted hole in the tank from Italy, you see that could have been detected with the leak detection and repair program. And then the company could have gone and fixed the tank.
Thanks to rapidly advancing technology, a growing fleet of satellites is now aiming to help close the valve on methane by identifying such leaks from space. Scientists from a European technology startup have been able to pinpoint the location, potency, and size of leaks around the world via satellite imagery.
In the Kashmir Premier League, Pakistan Stallions beat Mirpur Royals by 16 runs in the fourth match of the league in Muzaffarabad. Royals could manage to score 196 while chasing the target of 212 runs. Shan Masood was the top scorer for Stallions for his knock-off 78 runs. For Royals, Sharjeel Khan and Mohammad Akhlaq scored half-centuries. In the second match of the day, the Rawalakot Hawks will take on the Kotli Lions. The Pakistan Stallions, Rawalakot Royals and Muzaffarabad Tigers have made a winning start in the league so far. The International Cricket Council has announced the nominees for the Player of the Month for July. Pakistan's emerging female star Fatima Sana has figured in the women's shortlist after her impressive performance. Sana was the leading wicket-taker for Pakistan in the ODI series against the West Indies. She was also a joint leader for the Green Shirts in the 2020 series between the sides. Other nominees include the West Indian skipper Stephanie Taylor and all-rounder Hayley Matthews. In the men's category, Shakibul Hasan of Bangladesh, Australia's Mitchell Marsh and West Indian Hayden Walsh Jr. are in the battle. In the Tokyo Olympics, US, Canada and Ireland are among others to capture gold medals on the 12th day of the Games. On the 16th and last day of the Games, US leads with 39 golds each, followed by China with 38 and host Japan with 27. More on the Games in this report.
The United States beat Japan with a dominant performance of 90-75 to win gold in women's basketball. Jennifer Valente recovered from a late crash to land another gold for her country in the women's omnium. Kenyan legend Eliud Kipchoge claimed the gold medal in men's marathon. Cuba's Andy Cruz bagged gold in the men's lightweight boxing gold medal after beating Keyshawn Davis of the United States. In the women's lightweight category of the sport, Irish Kelly Anne Harrington beat Brazil's Beatriz Ferreira to win the gold. Meanwhile, Canadian rider Kelsey Michelle won gold in the women's sprint, defeating Ukrainian Olena Starikova in the final. The Bulgarian team scooped gold in the rhythmic gymnastic group event, ending a Russian winning streak that stretched back to the Sydney Games in 2000. Rio silver medalist Serbia overpowered South Korea in straight sets in the women's volleyball tournament to clinch the bronze medal.
In football, Lionel Messi has confirmed his departure from FC Barcelona, ending their 21-year-long association. This comes after the club said it could no longer afford paying his high wages. Addressing his final news conference for Barcelona, Messi said he never thought of leaving Barca and did everything to stay. He said he tried to behave with humility and respect and hoped he will be remembered as the same. The Argentine did not disclose his immediate future plans but hinted at Paris Saint-Germain as a possibility. Hundreds of fans, many wearing his number 10 jersey, massed outside Barca's Camp Nou stadium to bid farewell to the player. In mixed martial arts, Cyril Gane stopped hometown favorite Derek Lewis in the third round to capture the UFC interim heavyweight title. He is predicted to fight his former training partner and current heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou next to unify the title. Gane dominated throughout the fight, using his length and superior kicking game before stopping him with ground strikes. In the co-main event, former UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo defeated Pedro Munhoz via unanimous decision. Meanwhile, Vicente Luque submitted grappling specialist Michael Chiesa before calling for a shot at the welterweight title. In the women's strawweight category, Tessia Torres defeated Angela Hill in the rematch to claim a unanimous decision after 3 rounds of action. In tennis, Italy's Yannick Sinner and American Mackenzie McDonald have cruised into the final of the City Open. They will clash for the title in Washington today. The 5th seed Sinner out-dueled American Jensen Brooksby in straight sets to advance. He got a tough fight from wildcard Brooksby in the opening set before clinching victory. Meanwhile, McDonald battled past Japan's Kei Nishikori 6-4, 3-6 and 7-5 in the second semi-final. He took 2 hours and 45 minutes to get past the unseeded challenger. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.